Tēnā koutou katoa. Haere mai ki tēnei hui, te iwi o rangatane, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Councillor Renee Dingwall, and I will be the chair of this meeting. Deputy Mayor, councillors, members of the public, we have gathered here today to hear submissions on the Palmerston North City Council's proposed long-term plan, 2021 to 2031. So this is our third session for today, and I want to start with this saying, mā pango, mā whero, ka oti te mahi. When people of all backgrounds come together, there is nothing they cannot accomplish. And on that note, we shall begin with health and safety. So there are some descriptions there up on the screen at the moment. So in the unlikely event of a fire and emergency, we will calmly exit through these doors with the green exit signs, and we'll head over to the clock tower in Te Marae o Hine, the square, which is just outside the front. This is a non-smoking facility. There is a defibrillator in the front of house on the ground floor. And toilets are located in the link span, which is the area that you walked in just outside these doors. Yes, I think that's most of the health and safety. So this meeting is being recorded and will be available on the council website. This meeting is also being live streamed on the council's YouTube channel, and this means that elected members and the public are able to view it live or later at their convenience. We may have a submitter online a little bit later, but we'll chat to them shortly. So, on to our agenda. First up, we have apologies. I currently have apologies from Councillor Naylor for lateness, from the Mayor on council business, and from Councillor Findlay for being absent. Is there any other apologies? No, so with that, I will ask you to... Oh yes, so we'll have a mover, which is Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Butt will second. So we're just moving that the apologies be received from the Mayor on council business and Councillors Lou Findlay. So Councillor Lou Findlay is absent and Councillor Karen Naylor for lateness. So I'll just ask you to vote. Cool, so that has been, that is approved, all in favour. So we will move on to additional items. I don't think we have any additional items. Nope, so we will then move on to declarations of interest. I haven't received any. Do we have any declarations of interest? Nope. And so we'll now move the resolution to note the procedure sheet. So the committee resolved to note the procedure for hearing of submissions as described in the procedure sheet. There are copies of the procedure sheet on the table if anybody needs it. So I'll look for a mover, Councillor Hancock, and second, Councillor Johnson. Excellent. So I'll ask you to vote. Wonderful. That's been carried. All in favour. And then we shall now... Yes, so we will now move to our first submitter. And so as we come up to the microphones, because we are recording live, if you end up speaking and I haven't already called your name, please just say your name. But we'll start with submitter Martin Skinner, which is submission number 18. Excellent. So, Martin, we've got a traffic light system here, and so when you start to speak, it will go green, orange, red. So green will be about 7 minutes, orange is about 2, and then red will be 1 minute. And so it's quite good if you give some time for councillors to ask some questions.
Thank you, Renee. I appreciate the opportunity to talk on the submission. My name's Martin Skinner. Palmy City and what it means to me. Our city is great, many trees, and most of the streets are great character and value to our surroundings and make us feel warm and make, I think, all Palmer's North people feel proud. My partner Nora, and I've got 4 adult children who were raised here. In Palmy, I have Nora and my daughter and a son and 9 grandkids running around here. We all love this place of choice. My street, Rangiwa Ave, has been my home since 1985. Came from Southland and we haven't moved there since. We've just loved it. In our backyard we have 6 apple trees, 2 pears, 2 lemons, mandarin, silver birch, macadamia, fig trees, several kowhai trees, several maples and numerous other natives and exotic trees, plus 80 roses, 40 canaries, 1 cat and a chook. So that's in a 1/4 acre section. So we just love, my wife loves her garden and it's beautiful. But with that, in about 2019, we got a major shock in our street. Without notice to our end of the street, all the plane trees were levelled at one end from Andrew Ave to Vogel Street. About 20 8-metre high plane trees that have been there for at least 70 years, as old as me. Immediately the street lost its unique and beautiful charm and character in a mainly state housing area. So that was a huge shock to me, and that's why I'm here today. I want you people here to look after our town and our city and protect what we've got. So that's where I am. So
Thank you for that. So we will take questions from councillors. I might just actually quickly start with one myself. So you talked in your submission about wanting to add more trees and trees to the streets and parks in this area. What do you think about maintaining the trees that we already have? Do you think we should be doing more of that, or?
We should have, because they do show off our city, so we should look after them, we should care for them, we should have good arborists looking after them. There is a cost, the deciduous trees, they'll lose their leaves, there is work, that makes good compost at that end, but we could plant more native, we could even plant more fruit trees. We've got one olive tree grove which got thousands and thousands of olives, but we could do lemon tree, there's a whole lot of things we could do with trees.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I will, Councillor Johnson. Sorry.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Martin, for your submission. Have the trees been replanted in Rangiwa Avenue?
They have, yes, but they'll take at least 15 years before they got any life in them, and you lose all that character walking through that street. So
there was no consultation or warning given to you?
Not down our part of the street, because the whole street is lined with them. So immediately, about a third of the trees on that street just went, just like that. So it's lost a beautiful avenue that for no sound reason for me. I know we've got engineers here, and we can fix curb and channel, we can fix footpaths, but you can't. You chop a tree down and it's gone.
Thank you. We have had quite a few submitters submit on the topic of trees, and it is something that councillors have asked quite a lot of questions about recently. So do you have some ideas for any changes in policy that you'd like us to do?
Well, you can get professional people that say yes, and you get professional people that say no. We just need you people that govern our town to make sure it's been governed the correct way, that we are taking the options that should be taken. like some, yes, we may have to four-lane a road and do things like that, like Fitzherbert Ave and do that. We have to make big decisions. That's what you're here for. But I want good communication up and down the path so that we can move forward.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Question from Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Martin. In last part of your submission, you are suggesting that let's grow trees, Palmy. Are you suggesting apple and lemon trees in the streets, on the roadsides?
It'd be great, people can help feed themselves, take it out,
And can I ask you, do you have a background in forestry?
No, none whatsoever,
So,
no.
I mean, I have a background in forestry,
Yeah.
and in US, Germany, India, Pakistan, the big forest institutes, it's almost a crime if you plant a fruit tree on the roadside. So you can suggest trees, but I think it will not be a good idea to plant fruit trees on the roadside. It creates lots of traffic hazards.
Sorry, Councillor Butt, was that a question?
No.
So I'm just asking, would you be happy of suggesting some other trees rather than?
Yeah, I think we should make different changes. We should get a city that we love. Like I know, like I mentioned before, we've got olive trees. We know we get certain people go there at a certain time of the year and shake the hell out of them to take the olives. But that's all part of life, I'd love to go outside and grab a lemon off a lemon tree and come in and make a beautiful cup of tea, or a lemon cake.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And we have a question from Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Martin, for your comments. I guess, the whole thing of losing them overnight and not having any awareness until it happened. I'd just like to understand from you what your expectations would be, what you think could be reasonable for a council in terms of communications with the community before a significant change to street trees happens.
A good consultation with it. I know it can get overboard sometimes, but at least make an effort to, with technologies these days, everybody should have an email system, should be able to talk to them or make sure they get an answer. Down that other end of the street that I talked about, there could be a lot of rentals, so the people, they don't give a damn, they're away the next month or 2 months. But I've been there since '85, it's my heart, to see something like that go. And it's a lot of history's in that street.
Thanks, that's helpful, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That is the end of our questions. I just wanted to say thank you, Martin, for your submission today and for your passion around your neighbourhood and the trees. So we'll be deliberating on what happens next in a few days, and we'll talk about it then. But thank you very much for your submission.
Thanks for listening to me, and it's tough for me to get up here, and Renee, thanks, appreciate your welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next submitter is Jeff Kruschenk from Icebreakers Aquatics, and that is number 304 on your list. Thank you, Jeff. So just when you're ready, we'll have the traffic light system. Wonderful.
All right. To Chairperson Dingwall and PNCC councillors, kia ora tātou. I'd like to thank you for giving me the time to present to you this evening. My name is Jeff Kruschenk and I'm the current Chairperson of Icebreaker Aquatics, who I represent this evening. We're a swimming club based here in Palmerston North, and we cater to swimmers primarily aged between the ages of 6 and 17. Although we would like to offer swimming to older members, this is currently just not possible for us. We swim out of the Boys High Pool, and we're grateful to the support of Boys High for the use of the facility which we share with them, and water polo, canoe polo and tri-club. And through all of this usage, we can only have access to the pool for a small limited time each day, which is 2 hours. This of course creates issues, and which is the reason why I'm sitting in front of you today. Icebreaker Aquatics' mission is to develop confidence and successful in swimmers through a commitment to water safety, individual progress and team unity. With limited access to the boys' high pool and no other facility available to accommodate our swimmers, we're at capacity and we have a waiting list of members waiting to join our club. As a family club, we provide ourselves on providing swimming opportunities for all of our community. And as a club, we struggle to provide the services for training that is required by our members. As part of the wider swimming community, we really struggle in hosting and attending local swim meets. Our premier swimming facility at the Freiburg runs into capacity issues around 150 swimmers, and with little to no spectator seating, it is known to encourage our parents not to attend, and there is simply nowhere to put them. Then there is the added bonus of CLM not letting us have the pool until after 1 p.m. and kicking us out just before 5 so they can fit other users in. This obviously creates issues around us not being able to accommodate events for swimmers, and also creates loss of financial opportunities for our club. So throughout our submission we asked for quite a bit, and I'd also like to add to ask that aquatics users and clubs be actively involved from the first stages of this pending feasibility study to ensure we have an opportunity to contribute, so we have the confidence that the report is an accurate assessment from those who are at the coalface, something I don't believe has come down to our level at club levels in the past when this has gone around. And I'd also like to provide PNCC an understanding that all aquatics groups are wanting to work together to provide our community with a multi-purpose facility that provides for all the aquatics sports and recreational users for the next 50 years, and certainly not just putting a plaster on something today with a promise for tomorrow. Sadly, I'm sitting here again today as this is not the first time that this topic has been raised for the decision makers of our city. The 2016 Active Recreation Needs Assessment report stated that swimming was one of the most popular activities enjoyed by all. The analysis suggested that pools in Palmerston North were near capacity back then and required near capacity required for some of the year. I'd also like to note that I could debate the word some is actually probably most. The feedback suggested that demand for lane space at peak times exceeded what is available, and a robust analysis of the types of pools is necessary to meet the community's future needs for health, leisure and recreation and sport, and that's certainly something I'd like to be involved in from the users of the pools. Back to 2017 when this was talked about, Councillor Duncan McCann quoted at the time that it was clear the city's pools were getting near saturation point. It would be hard to cater for a growing population just by moving things around. He said the council should be planning facilities to cater for an increased population where more demands, and should also consider setting up a pool that would host national events. Moving forward 5 years, and as stated in the page 33 of your 10-year plan, and I quote, walking is the most popular recreation in Palmy, followed by swimming. With the growth of the population in the city in the last 5 years, the saturation point isn't going away, and it's something we have to try and navigate through on a club basis, on a daily basis. There is not a meeting go by in our club where we're trying to figure out new ways to give swimmers an opportunity to join and swim and participate in their sport. We're asking decision makers to the city to be bold and to finally acknowledge, act and invest in an aquatics facility that will see us through the next 50 years as we grow our city. If we don't do this properly, we'll simply be back here next time when the long-term plan comes up. The same bold thinking and vision used by John Bolt back in 1981 when he had a vision of a covered 25-metre pool at the Lido. The same vision used by our city over 50 years ago when the outdoor pool at the Lido was constructed. Both visions were considered wild at the time, which we've all reaped the benefits of over our generations. Most recently, the councillors in this room who came up with the idea to put a bridge over He Awa Koteri, something that was criticised at the time, but we're all reaping the benefits, and everyone can see that what a great investment that's been. This vision has to involve a new multi-purpose built indoor 10-lane 50-metre pool, multi-purpose and adaptable to all aquatic sports. Talking water polo for a second, we have 13-year-olds travelling to Wellington every Thursday night, not getting home till 11 p.m. just to play their sport. Simply covering the Lido outdoor pool won't fix this, and as it's not a water polo pool, and it's certainly not adaptable to the requirements for 25-metre swimming. With our central location, it has to have the ability to host events of national significance: swimming, water polo, canoe polo, triathlon, you name it, let's have it. The reality is the problem with overcrowding in our aquatics facilities has been with us for a long time, and it isn't going away. In fact, by doing nothing, we're making this matter worse. We are asking councillors to act with urgency and to invest in our children of today and tomorrow and our future aquatics users, and let's do it properly this time around. And I'd like to thank you for having the opportunity for me to speak, and if you've got any questions.
Thank you. There is a question from Councillor Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Jeff, for your submission. You may have seen we've had a lot of submissions on this topic. We, at the moment, have got the feasibility for aquatic facilities in year 2 and year 3 of the plan. So are you asking us to bring that forward to year 1?
I think we need to act with a thing of urgency around this, because the longer we leave it, the worse it gets, and things don't happen. I think we've seen around this table there's a lot of support for a new aquatics facility, and I think it's time to make something happen, and let's do it while the iron's hot, so to speak.
Okay, so you're not only supporting it being done, you want it done as quickly
as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Because at the end of the day, if anyone wants to come down and have a look at trainings or come to swim meets or anything like that, we could love to show you what we have to go through, and same with all the other aquatics users. I'm sure they'd love to invite you down.
Thank you.
We have a question from Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jeff, for your presentation. Jeff, are you aware of, obviously you're looking for funding from council for this, are you aware of any other organisations or that would be possible for funding?
Well, I could just talking into what's happened in Gisborne, Hastings, Wellington, with the Nainai Poi into Stratford. I know there was quite a bit of central government investment put into those facilities, and certainly, I mean, the cost of a pool isn't cheap, so we'd need to, as a group, and I'd love to be involved in that, to go around and find these funding opportunities to help make these things happen.
Thank you.
We have a question from Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Chair. Just in regards to the numbers of people going to Wellington on Thursday nights that you referenced,
Yep.
Can I get an idea of how many people would be involved making that trip each week?
For water polo, they're probably be known to take away 2 to 3 teams a night, which you're talking about 25, 30 people can go down there every single Thursday. They had a group going to Blenheim the last weekend. So there's, obviously the stress of the parents and the swimmers and the cost of going down there. And these are opportunities that we could have these facilities here. They could come here.
Great, thank you.
And Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Jeff. Actually, just perfectly dovetails onto the end of your response to Councillor Dennison, saying that if we had the facility here, people might come. How big of a catchment are we talking about? I mean, at the moment, we're sending people an hour and a half away or 2 hours. So how big of a catchment would we be thinking about in terms of potential users for a facility?
Talking into that, swimming carnivals, we quite often, even here in Freiburg, can get swimmers out of Wellington, Hawke's Bay, up into Taranaki. With our central location, it provides good competition for those swimmers. There's opportunities if we do something and we brave and we put a proper facility in to host national events. I know Swimming New Zealand would be like to talk about that, because with our central location, we're an hour on a plane from Auckland, an hour on a plane from Christchurch.
Thank you. So just to dive in a little bit further there, so more around the regular use, the training, what sort of catchment would we see for people wanting training access?
Training access would be the growth of it in our community as well. There's at the moment, we as I say, we're at capacity. We've got nowhere to put people. So a catchment into, you're talking probably regular use from up into Wanganui down into sort of Levin, Otaki.
Great.
Regularly every week.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. We have now reached time for your submission, so thank you very much for coming in and talking to us today. So we will consider your submission along with the other 700 odd submissions. Thank you. Our next submission is from Carl Massarotto, submission number 223.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having me. My name is Carl Massarotto. I'm not formally representing any particular organization, but I'm highly involved with canoe polo across a number of levels. Firstly, at a national level, where I play for the New Zealand Masters team, but I also sit on the New Zealand Canoe Polo Coaching Council, the New Zealand Canoe Polo Competition Council. I'm a referee assessor, And I've just been appointed an under-18 co-coach for the New Zealand teams to play Australia later this year. I'm also a member of the local Manoa Kiwi Canoe Polo Club, where I sit on the local committee as secretary and have done so for about 15 years. And I coach 2 of our representative teams of young players. And finally, I'm also the lead coach at St. Peter's College, where we've had a lot of big success recently. Our senior team won the national title at secondary schools last year and went back-to-back this year, winning it again. But the other good news this year was our other 2 St. Peter's teams, our Div 2 boys and our under-15 girls, also became national champions. And I'm not saying this to blow my own horn as the coach of the team, but to show that the success of these teams has been based on the excellent canoe polo facilities we've had to date. And of course, all the volunteer time of all the members and families involved. But to continue to build on these successes, not only at St. Peter's, but for the wider Manoa too, we need to continue to support our grassroots level canoe polo to get more kids playing so that they can be part of our canoe polo family, get them active, and then provide them the facilities to move on to success at the national and international stage as well. So to do this, we need to have continued access to indoor pool facilities. We've been very lucky to be hosted by Freiburg Pool for the last few years. But yeah, like Jeff was saying, it's not enough time. There's not enough time in the day to do that. My junior girls team, under 15 girls, some of them as young as 12, are playing a game tonight at 9 p.m. That's just the time they can fit into the pool. So having a new aquatic facility on a 50-meter pool where we could potentially run 2 games simultaneously if we ran across the court would certainly allow more pool time for us, and we could run more games quickly, could free up time for other users as well. The aquatic facility would also have huge benefit for our adult players as well. So at the moment, in the winter, when it gets too cold for us to play down on the Hockefita Lagoon, we move indoors to the Freiburg pool, but because it's a 25-meter pool and the New Zealand a regulation canoe polo court needs to be 35 meters long, it means we can't really have a proper game. It means we have to drop from a 5-a-side game to a 4-a-side game, which obviously impacts a lot. Not just on, fitness, because you're not paddling as far, but it's the whole game dynamic changes. So our top New Zealand players, and there are many of them based in the Manoa too, can't get decent game time through, 3 or 4 months of the year. So a 50-meter pool would certainly help address that problem as well. Having that 50-meter pool would also mean we could attract more national competitions. So last weekend, a whole bunch of our B-grade players went down to Wellington to play a tournament, and then next weekend, a whole bunch more of our teams are traveling down to Wellington again to play a C and D-grade tournament. We could easily host that tournament here and attract all those players to come and stay in our fine city. We should also plan to build a purpose-built outdoor canoe polo facility. They've installed one recently in Hawke's Bay. I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but they've got a 4-court facility out there that's part of the Hastings big sports facility. We could do something bigger and better than they have done, and we could then attract international competitions. I think Robert Coulson, the Manoa Kiwi Canoe Polo chairperson, is coming in to speak about that later in the week. The Hockefita Lagoon is great, and it's amazing that we have free access to the pool, to those courts, which has contributed greatly to the club's success. But there's some issues down there, as you may know, with the neighbors having issues with the noise and our presence. There's also issues with the water quality, and there seems to be, after a rain event, we get human fecal coliforms presence in the lagoon, which is obviously a concern to us. But there's also the issues with even, the avian botulism that keeps reappearing. I don't know how many ducks I've had to cull manually that they're just paralyzed in the water, and I've had to go and clear them off the courts and kill them and put them in the rubbish. It's reasonably unpleasant. My submission is just to, ask that the council continues to support canoe polo as it has, and like Jeff has said, that things are continuing to grow, and we need bigger and better facilities if we're going to continue to lead the way in that sport. Thank you.
Thank you for your submission, Carl. We do have some questions and some time for questions, so we'll start with Councillor Harpiter.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Carl. The courts over in the Hawke's Bay, can they use them for anything else but canoe polo?
No, they've been, I think, built with the local triathlon clubs, so they can use them for triathlon. So they have a lot of their junior triathlon events held there as well. So they can. It's a reasonably shallow facility. I think it's about 1.5, 2 meters deep. So it's quite good for kids to be able to swim. So they've got. I don't know how the exact dimensions, but it's probably 60 meters long and about, it might not be longer than 60, be close to 90 meters long and probably 50 meters wide, so they can get a good circuit there. So it can be used for triathlon and swimming as well as canoe polo.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Carl, for that. What will happen to canoe polo if there isn't an investment in aquatic facilities?
I think it will still continue to exist in Palmerston North, but we will be stifled. At the moment, we're losing out competitions and New Zealand training camps to the Hawke's Bay facility. And we'll probably also see more of our senior players who need to train in the winter leave Palmerston North. They might move to the Hawke's Bay because they've got the new facility, 50-meter indoor facility going in there where they'll be able to train. So, yeah, it won't be the end of canoe polo in Palmerston North, but it certainly won't put us in the leadership position that we have been for the last few years.
And with all the new pools popping up in the Hawke's Bay facility particularly, is there really a need for one here?
If you talk to our local membership, they would say there's definitely, anytime you have to travel away, it's an added cost and added burden. And the fact that the Hawke's Bay canoe polo courts haven't been built in line with a world championship view to it, that's we could do so much better and can attract an international competition here. I don't know, once every 10 years or so would be amazing.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Carl. Thanks for your written submission as well. It's very short, sweet, straight to the point. So I've got a couple of questions. So the first one is you mentioned that Hawke's Bay have got 4 courts and then went on to say that if we essentially invested in Palmy that we could possibly attract some international games. How many courts would be required to be at that calibre where we would be considered for that?
We would need about 8 courts. You need full 4 courts, and then you need 8 warm-up goals for all the 4 teams that would play the next game.
Okay. Thank you. And then the next question was your opening line of your 2 lines, written submission, says that you're keen for a purpose-built canoe polo facility. Can you tell me more about what that could look like and where that would be?
I'm not sure where it would be. It would have to find a suitable amount of land. What the Hawke's Bay guys have done, which is really clever, is they've linked with the wider sports facility that involves rugby fields and hockey fields. So the canoe polo courts act as a water reservoir for watering all the grass, which is quite good because it keeps the water quality good, keeps it moving, and also sort of makes you get a dual benefit from the use of that water. So that would probably be a consideration to do here as well, because it'd be similar or more volume of water that you'd want it to make use of. Basically it involves a little bit of earthworks to create the courts, some sort of heavy-duty plastic lining to retain the water, and then just the goal infrastructure. Ideally, you'd have some sort of building, clubroom facilities and storage facilities for equipment as well, and maybe some grandstands for spectators.
Okay, but the purpose-built facility would be in the realm of like the 8 courts, for example, or?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Carl. Just because I'm not familiar really with what's required, do I understand correctly by saying that what you're asking for is an outdoor canoe polo exclusive facility,
Well-
plus an Olympic-sized swimming pool for the winter as well.
That's right. Yeah, the Olympic pool would be used by, of course, other people.
Yeah.
The outdoor facility would not necessarily have to be exclusive to canoe polo. You know, waka ama, triathlon, people like that could use it potentially as well.
But it's not a swimming facility, basically.
But you could use it as an outdoor swimming facility as well, potentially, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carl. We have now run out of time for your submission, but thank you very much for coming and talking to us today, and we will consider your submission along with the other 700-odd submissions.
Thank you very much.
And our next submission today is Matthew McKenzie, which is submission number 422. Welcome, Matthew. And so we've got a traffic light system. So you've got 7 minutes for the green, 2 minutes for the orange, and 1 minute for the red. And it'd be great if you could leave time for councillors to ask questions. But ready to start whenever you are.
Thanks. Good evening, and thank you for your time. I submitted on this long-term plan because safe cycle infrastructure needs to be prioritised in Palmerston North. As we saw with our COVID response in New Zealand, going early resulted in the least long-term pain. This council can do the same with climate change. One of the biggest emitters in New Zealand is personal car travel. This council has the ability to make the difficult but right choice and prioritise low-carbon forms of transport. We currently have low rates of biking in Palmerston North. This is due to the low rate of protected cycle paths in the city. In comparison, a city in Finland called Oulu manages to get 50% of school and university trips by bike, despite a winter that does not get much above -6 degrees Celsius. They have a lower population density than Palmerston North. They managed to do this through having about 4 metres of protected bike path per resident. This would look like 360 kilometres of protected bike paths in Palmerston North. Which is, we've got nowhere near that at the moment. The trial to Main Street, I think, is setting the standard we have to meet on most of our high traffic streets in Palmerston North. In relation to that, it would be good to have some bike phase lights at the intersections, just so it's a more complete path. There's quite a few gaps in that trial at the moment. This trial, I think, is in contrast to College Street and Summerhill. And these are making improvements, but more for the hardened cyclists who ride every day now. I don't think these current improvements there will do very much to encourage new novice bikers because there's no separation from traffic. And can we finally get the Ashurst path finished? This has dragged on for too long now. 7.5 years since the opening of the last section. I mean, it's time for no more excuses, please, just get it done. And finally, on another crisis New Zealand's facing, I'd like to see more investment in social housing, because when too many people do not have a secure place to call home, I think it risks the fabric of society and we stop sticking together. Any questions?
Thank you, Matthew. We do have a question from Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Matthew, for sticking with us through all of this. You've made multiple submissions on our cycle plans, particularly over the years, so thank you. There was a comment in your written submission, and you've reinforced that, I think, in your submission to us now, where you said paint on a road is not a safety measure, sharrows on a road is not a safety measure, and you alluded to the work that we're doing on Summerhill and College Street, saying that's good but not great. So what does safe cycling look like to you?
For me, it's just trying to create that physical separation, and I think the best example, is sort of some of the work being done on Main Street, but also just the path out to Massey, the old one. I mean, that was separated from traffic the whole way along, even though it was just a raised curve, and just that actually makes quite a difference. That's the sort of thing I would hope we would move more towards.
And you said that makes difference for novice cyclists. Why does that Why novice cyclists?
Well, I think the council's looking to increase the number of people biking, and I think most people, if they're not biking now, one of the big factors is going to be safety. There's studies done, and that's the main factor why people choose not to bike, is safety.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We've got a question from Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Matthew. And thanks for the comments about the trial cycleway. As someone who's regularly accosted when they do their supermarket shopping about it, it's nice to see a support. But really my question's about the social housing. So you've said that you want to see more social housing and significantly more. Do you have an idea of how much more, either in cost terms or in number terms?
I don't. I haven't done I don't know the numbers for Palmerston North specifically, say, on that. But I just know that in New Zealand it is a problem, and I don't have any statistics at hand.
No, that's fine. I mean, we have got money in the long-term plan, about 12 million for more social housing, and I just wondered if you had a ballpark of where you thought we should be going with it.
No, not exactly, sorry.
Just as much as we can?
Yes, basically, yeah.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Matthew, and much like Councillor Bowen, appreciate you taking the time to consistently bring these messages to us. Just wanted to get your views. You used the word massively in your written submission in reference to how much the budget needed to go up. And just wondered if you had, what does massively mean to you? And the second part of the question, if I can augment it a bit, is that currently the balance between the on-road network and the off-road shared path is about 1-to-1. So do you have a view that both of those need to go up massively, or is it one or the other?
I would, even if we looked at, say, the cycling master plan, I think a lot of those are not necessarily planned to be protected cycleways, a lot of those streets. But if they were changed to be all protected cycleways, I think we need at least a basic network of, maybe say 10 streets, 10 key streets that are have protected cycle routes. And I think to achieve that, we would need to increase the budget because the previous budgets have not achieved very much in that regard.
Great, thank you. And I guess then just to clarify, so that answer was focused on the sort of on-street network. So in terms of the off-road shared path, as long as we get you to Ashurst, you're happy?
I mean, yeah, I think the main area that needs to be improved is the on-street in Palmerston North, because that's where we'll get the most usage for at least commuting. Just depends on if the council wanted to focus more on recreational, then, pass to fielding and stuff I think are good as well. But if we're looking for commuting, then in the city.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair.
Question from Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Matthew, for your submission and actually your continual submissions over the years. And it's particularly nice to read your opening line around supporting increasing rates and borrowing to be able to do some good stuff in the city, which is quite the opposite to many of our submissions. I just wanted to flesh out your comments around the cycle phasing a little bit further, because it was possibly 2 long-term plans ago, we did have a decent amount of money in there for phasing, and we converted that over to be essentially paint on the road to try and promote the visibility of cycle lanes rather than just achieving 1 or 2 intersections, getting the phasing in each year. And so I guess I'm wondering where you see the balance needs to be around highlighting that cyclists are using roads by way of a painted lane versus putting more into achieving phasing. Like, where do you see the balance?
I think because we have almost no phasing at the moment, I think more emphasis on that, because intersections are the most dangerous point, because that's the point of conflict, so I'd say we need to put more onto that, and I was disappointed that actually that budget did get transferred away from that, because I think that would have made a big difference, giving people the option to get across an intersection safely.
Okay, thank you. And then just a second question would be, in regards to, I guess, the investment we're putting into cycling across the city, there's sometimes conflicting feedback around whether every street should receive treatment or key priority streets should receive, I guess, more treatment, essentially the separation or other aspects. What's your view? Should we try and spread ourselves a bit thinner across the city or focus on key?
I would think focusing on key streets. I mean, if you say, for me, one of the key ones is just Featherston Street. I mean, my partner, for example, could bike to work if just Featherston Street was made safe. You know, and there's a lot of businesses that are on it or nearby and schools off just, say, that one street. Because a lot of side streets off that, say, Pascal Wood Street, are not nearly as bad. And so I think focusing on that would make the most difference, in my view.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you. We have reached the end of your time for your submission, so thank you very much for coming in and talking to us today, and we will consider your submission along with the others. Thank you. And next up, we have the Brazilian community group, Palmeirinhos. Excellent. And that is submission number 496.
I'm trying to call the crew to come together.
Fair enough.
Some support.
That's one.
Thank you.
And so we do have a traffic light system here. So it will go green for about 7 minutes, orange for 2 minutes, and then red for 1. And it would be great if you could leave some time for councillors to ask questions.
I'll try.
Wonderful. So ready to start whenever you are.
Thank you. So I'm here on behalf of the Brazilian community group, the Palmeirinhos. So with me, it's Carla and Walter. They are Brazilians. Our submission, it's a group of ideas and thoughts of many people in our community. So we asked them what is important for them to put in the submission. So we put everything together for the 10 years plan, and we sent our submission. So all the ideas here has the same weight, as they are part of what our community want. So, however, as we have short time and you have read all of them, we choose just a few topics to be talking about tonight. Next. Just change. Which one? Oh. This one? Oh, thank you. So, first of all, we would like to thank the PNCC for the opportunity of being here, and also to support many initiatives that help community groups like us to keep our culture, background, and heritage alive for current and future generation. Some of the initiatives that help us in this journey, they start in 2018, is the City Library, the programs that they have at the City Library, PNCC events, and MMC. So first, we like to talk about the community centers. So PNCC expressed that they want to increase the occupants of the community centers. So a big barrier for small groups are physical space for gathering. So if community centers consider to waive the fees maybe once or twice per month, so these groups, these communities could connect, embrace their culture. So Palmeirinhos faced this problem and still facing it when we want to have big events. So luckily we had the MMC, they waived the fees for us, so we could start to have our classes there. Because we had the idea for many years, but we didn't have this physical space because we didn't have money. Yes, other thing that we would like to talk about is the safe space to be in the next 10 years. So many members of our community group has experienced some kind of racism or discrimination, including us, and including my 6-year-old daughter, that I think most of you have seen her around. She's half Kiwi, half Brazilian, blonde, blue eyes, and she had suffered some kind of racism or discrimination just because she was speaking Portuguese. So probably I could not see any specific plan in this area in the draft. So maybe if you have more explicit plans about how to combat racism or discrimination in our city, it would be great. Because if this is happening strongly now, can you imagine 10 years' time? So how to do this? Education at local schools, and maybe using social media, so try to normalize what is different, maybe using community group as a model for the PNCC advertising or something like this. I think would be a good strategy. Yeah. And the reduction of carbon emission, one of the goals of the PNCC is to decrease the carbon emission and reduction of the ecological footprint. So one thing that Carla put the idea was the community bikes. We are not talking about very fancy bikes or electric bikes. It's just push bikes. So it's a very eco-friendly method of transportation. So many cities around the world, they use this already, and it's a very successful way. So in Brazil, we have the Itaú, it's a bank. They have a partnership with the local government, and they have the bikes. We have Mass University here, we have Fonterra, we have IPU, we have UCO, and we have banks as well. So maybe trying to have a partnership would be quite interesting. I remember many years ago we had the green bikes that people swap, but start to disappear. But this is a little bit different concept because nowadays we have better technology, so we can track and trace where the bikes are, and also we can charge some fees if post and done. So it's quite interesting method. If you want to know a little bit more, Carla is the expert. She has used this around the world a lot. Another thing that we would like to talk about is the recycling. So one of the big problems when talking about recycling is the contamination. So, and it is known that it comes mostly from low income areas in Palmas North. So maybe I didn't put the right wording over there. Maybe I could put like PNCC with partnership of eco partners, could provide funding for low-income residents to receive maybe one rubbish bag every 2 weeks. So I think this would be a quite good solution to reduce at least the contamination, because it's well known that at least 2 or 3 times per week they found like nappies in the recycling bins. And also with this, improve or increase the use of the educational facility that they have at Avapuni recycling plant. We have used this facility, the educational facility, with the play center twice already. It was really interesting. So the mothers and the kids start to think in a different way. So, and we are talking about kids 0 to 6 years old. Can you imagine if we have like more educational programs in this place? I think it would be quite interesting. And that's it.
Thank you. We will have some questions. We'll start with Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Maria. Maria, in your submission, you've got that you'd like more housing.
Yes.
And but you've mentioned like Huey Street Reserve, you'd want to leave that as a green space. So are you saying that all the spare land in Palmerston that the council has, you'd want to leave as a green space?
No, I was very specific. I said the Hui Street.
Why
Yeah.
particularly that one? Because that, in Palmerston, that whole area has got the most greenest space around it, so why particularly that one?
Because I'm at Play Center that is just in Hui Street. We are there for 75 years. And we have seen, I'm there for 6 years with my kids at Play Center, and we have seen that it has changed a lot, that area, and increased the traffic. So we have changed from 9 a.m. to 9:15 the start of Play Center because the parents get stuck in the traffic in that intersection. So I think it will be a huge impact with more houses there. Probably we will need to change for 10 a.m. the start of our sessions. So it's very busy area. And one of the concerns of Play Center is that the car parks will disappear. So it will be very difficult for mothers to go with the kids, especially in bad days. So we need to walk further because it's very limited, the space, the parking space out of that, the Hui Street area.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mickeled.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks for the submission, which looks great. I just had a question in relation to something that you mentioned about racism and that your community has also been experiencing that. And you've also highlighted some of the ways in which we can approach or deal with such issues, such as education. Do you think that we're doing a good job at educating the public on that as a council?
Sorry, but not.
Sorry, no. And you mentioned that in your submission here that we needed to fund communities to build capacity, community capacity. Is that sort of thing that you're also looking at? Us probably investing more money into programs or having a strategic plan and lessons and having those sort of education or PD, professional development, in terms of us probably approaching racism, tackling racism in the community?
Yes.
So do you also believe that we should also probably also do social media campaigns and releasing more material out there to sort of educate the public on some of those issues?
Yes.
Cool. No, thanks.
Well, thank you. We have reached the end of the time for the submission. So thank you very much for coming in and talking with us today. And we will consider your submission along with the others.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next submission will be from Malgra, and we'll be hearing from Cameron, I believe. No? We'll be hearing from the whole Malgra crew. And that is submission number 544.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and fellow councillors. We will just talk to the main points, a couple of the points of our submission that you have there. So, as with our community organisations reflecting diversity of community in Palmerston North, Malgra seeks to actively engage an ongoing relationship with PNCC in a formally recognised way. Malgra has been operating since 1977 to advocate for, support and enhance the provisions of safe social and health services and support for the rainbow and gender diverse communities. Over the last few years, Malgra has adapted to the changing needs of our communities. We have started to understand that for Malgra to meet our key goals and objectives, which are the same or similar to those of PNCC, we need to have and formulate a more robust formal working relationship with PNCC, which is why we are requesting a dedicated rainbow and gender diverse liaison representative. We see Marlborough as the council's, or should be the council's main point of engagement for the gay, lesbian, intersex, transgender, takatapui, whawhawhine, asexual, bisexual and allied communities, to positively affect council's goals to be informed, supportive link to the communities of gender and sexual diverse we engage with. We know our own people, we are informed by our own people, and we know that our rainbow and gender diverse communities are some of the most vulnerable. We have the lived experiences and the informed awareness of the challenges and joy our communities encounter daily. Marlborough has an established track history of representing and passionately advocating for the LGBTQ and GLITFAB communities within the region, and we propose that by working collaboratively with an identified council representative tasked with ongoing specific engagements with Marlborough and our communities would be an opportunity for this relationship with PNCC to be recognised for our retrospective effects towards safety, inclusivity and diversity. So that's seeking to the first 2 points, and obviously we've, in tabling our notes, we've also got some feedback on why a key dedicated rainbow safe space is important to our community, and I've also tabled some statistics from the Counting Us survey, which indicates how severe some of our community is affected, and it's quite numbing when you read the numbers for us. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
I'm going to open it up for questions. We have had some jumping around in the queue, so I will start with, as in it's appeared and disappeared, so I'm hoping that's not a technical glitch, but we will start with the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your submission. I'm just wondering around the safe space suggestion that you've put forward. I know that the Safety Advisory Board several years ago were working with, I assume, Marlborough, but certainly we had the youth wing and also the Massey group, I think it was GLITFAB, who were working on a sticker or something that was identifiable so that businesses and organisations could show that they were a safe space by putting something on the window as opposed to a separated space. And so I just wondered if you could talk about where that concept of a separated space has come back to, and whether you're looking for knowing what safe spaces are in the community, or you're still wanting something separate. Does that make sense?
Yes, so that we were consulted. It was done, in my view, quite a backwards way. We were given funding by the council to produce a sticker, but were given no support to actually get the program up and running and established. And then when we attempted to, it became non-community led, and council overtook and started to take control away from the community, and as a result it hasn't gone anywhere. We have subsequently since picked that up, working with our connection with Te Manoa and a couple of other allies and agencies that we've established since then to get it re-going, but that is essentially off our own back and our own funding. So we are working on that, but it's been left to us with no other support.
I guess I was probably more leaning towards the idea of, because in your comments you're talking about a dedicated safe space, and I understand that as a particularly as somewhere to gather and meet, but I guess I'm wondering if those are two separate ideas that could happen at the same time, or whether it was one or the other.
They would work in conjunction. Yeah, it would all be a collaborative approach, and we certainly are working with UniQ as well on making more spaces more safer as well. So I'm actively part-time at Massey and involved with UniQ as well in terms of breaking down barriers that students and lecturers have as well. So I'm working in that field too. So it certainly is a joint effort.
Madam Chair, am I able to ask one more question, or are there others?
There are others in the queue.
Okay, perhaps
So
you can come back to me
we'll
if there's
see if we
time.
can come back to you.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Cam and team, for your presentation. Where you suggest that PNCC provide a dedicated rainbow and gender diverse liaison rep, are you thinking a member of staff, or are you thinking an elected member?
I would ideally be an elected member, but my vision of that would be very similar to how you've run others in terms of, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it might be the MMC or the migrant community. You've got one in one of those groups.
So where we've got appointed councillors to groups?
Yes.
You would like an appointed councillor?
Yes.
To Margaret. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. And I just wondered more generally if there are actions that you think that elected members could take, as opposed to necessarily what council as a whole could fund or organise, that would be helpful to your group feeling more supported.
I can, yes.
Oh, look at that. My name's Matt. I'm Cam's husband. I am extremely experienced in the work of Malgra. I've been a member since 1984 when I came here from Christchurch. And over those years, Malgra has dealt with a range of challenges and issues coming literally out of the closet of the back area behind Square Edge there, to be in a more engaging position with communities within the Manoa too. We're certainly putting ourselves out there now, and our challenge is around ensuring that services that are provided within this region, services that are delivered to members of our communities, are safe, appropriate and informed. So it's about making sure really that council is informed as well and understands the challenges and issues that are experienced on a day-to-day basis by our communities, and we would be happily providing that information.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have a question from Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for coming along and presenting it. I just want to just get a little bit of clarity just around the Safe Zone initiative, which was overtaken by the Safety Advisory Board and perhaps the City Council. Can you just tell me when that initiative was launched or activated?
I don't have the dates off the top of my head. I know it was 3 or 4 years ago. It was maybe 5. It was before that safety board was disbanded or lost its funding.
Right, thank you. No, I now chair the Safety Advisory Board, so I just wanted to try and backtrack on that and just sort of see where that got to. So thank you very much for your answer.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for coming in. I wanted to pick up on the drop-in space that you've got there, just to ask, is that a project that you're working on currently? Have you somewhere in mind, and how can we help with that?
It's a current project that's come from the need, and at every event and everything we do, we seek feedback, and it has come from the feedback, and you also see some of the key feedback in the notes that I have just tabled tonight. And the problem we have is there is a lack of space for community groups. I mean, we have inquired with Square Edge and the community arts. There's no space there. There's no space in Community Services Council, Hancock House. And so there's literally no space for us to set one up. And it ideally needs to be our own space rather than a shared space. And so that is where we're looking at, is that we can go privately, but then obviously that comes with additional costs and resources that we may not know about. And the concern is there's no space at this stage.
So you're asking council to consider if we have space?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, team. We have now run out of time for this submission, but thank you very much to all of you for coming in and for talking to us today. We will be considering your submission alongside the other submissions.
Thank you,
So
Madam
thank you.
Chair.
Thank you. And coming up now, we have Te Manoa Museum's Trust Board, and so we don't have Andy today, but we will have Caroline Tate, who's the Deputy Chair, and Janet Ellery, who is People in Partnerships, and that is submission 653. And Catherine as well.
Tēnā koutou katoa ngā mihi nui kia koutou ngā pau o te kaunihira o Papaioia. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Te Manoa Museums Trust is very pleased to be able to speak to our written submission this evening. As a museum working beyond boundaries, our contributions support the city to be a future-focused, creative, connected and exciting place. So we are taking our submission as read, and I have just a few comments to make before taking any questions. This goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Te Manoa appreciates the ongoing support of the Council for its activities and to the wider arts and culture sector of Palmerston North and the Manoa Art District. We're committed to demonstrating real impacts and benefits from our efforts and from organisations that we work with in order to support the city's goals and strategies. We also support the arts and culture efforts of other organisations, and in particular those who embrace the whole ideal of pushing beyond their own boundaries. And I can give you a couple of examples of that, such as the Summer Shakespeare series with Massey Arts funding, and also a special mention for the Square Edge Community Arts, who are doing outstanding work with their community outreach. In addition, we'd like to signal support for an arts-focused age grade event fund to encourage young people to participate in the arts, and also the conservation plans for council-owned heritage buildings in the city. We look forward to the development of the Civic and Cultural Precinct Master Plan and the opportunity to contribute to this as the project activities unfold. We're excited by the potential for growth and amplification of central city vibrancy that this initiative will enable. We note the proposal for earthquake strengthening of Te Manoa and have suggested a slightly increased funding level in our written submission. And the final point that I'd like to make is in relation to the Trust's commitment to Te Manoa as a special place for tangata whenua. This has been significantly enhanced with the engagement of Rongomo Productions for the delivery of Kaiho 2 services. As far as we know, this service arrangement is somewhat unique in the museum sector, and in simple terms, our ability to access and engage directly with rangitane, other iwi, Māori organisations and audiences has increased in what we believe to be an unprecedented scale. And the example that I'll use there to demonstrate that is in relation to the agreement for Te Manoa to care for the moa bones that were recently excavated from the new highway, Te Ahua Tūranga, and the significance of the service model change is that this saw 5 iwi, New Zealand Transport Authority, contractors and other interested parties come together at Te Manoa for a dawn blessing. It was significant from the perspective that it was the first time that Te Manoa had hosted 5 iwi in one place at the same time, and the fact that the blessing was organised in under 7 days. Rongomo's connections, relationships and organisational skills were absolutely critical to this extraordinary achievement of collaboration, cooperation and agreement being realised. So we look forward to many opportunities that this new arrangement is going to enable for both rangitane and Te Manoa across all museum activities. So on that note, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We have a question from Councillor Lutt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, team, for your presentation. on your first page of presentation, you are suggesting that we should change this 51 million figure to 70 million because obviously you don't know what this 51 million contains. Have you done some calculations for this 70 million? Do you have a plan for 70 million?
So we have looked at this in relatively recent history with Te Manoa, and in our view, the 51 million is a bit light. So we looked at a future facility that would be fit for purpose for all of our collections and our exhibition activities and our engagement activities, and we do believe that the 70 million more accurately reflects a sum that would enable that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Caroline, for stepping in as Deputy Chair. My question was about, well, there's a paragraph in the submission from Andy about recognising, I think, what we'd all see as inevitable tension working with founding societies. And there's a submission in our pack from Te Manoa Art Society asking Council to direct Te Manoa's funding towards an art director. I wondered if I could seek a comment from you on if that's feasible.
I don't think in an ideal world anybody would disagree with that statement. For Te Manoa, it comes back to trying to manage within the budget constraints that it has. We have a huge brief art, science, heritage, and in an ideal world we would have champions and specialists directed at each of those disciplines. What is currently reflected in the way that we are working is what is able to be done with the current budget levels. We would of course be quite happy to receive additional funding if in the consideration of the proposals that are before the Council at the moment, that if art was seen for the city to be of significance in the order that the Art Society have asked for, we would be happy to accommodate that and help.
Okay. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Caroline and Janet, for your submission. I noted the strong support for restoration of some arts funding that was cut in last year's budget, and I wondered if you could just, as a broad kind of brush, say what you think the value is in Council funding the arts, because we've certainly had, as you might imagine, submissions from people saying that Council shouldn't spend a cent on the arts. So I'd be interested for you to hear why you think that's a good thing.
As the Museum of Art, Science and Heritage, we support all of these areas. In this day and age, it is very, very difficult to separate out any of those disciplines from each other. And so what we are seeing now is more and more creativity coming forward with combinations of the disciplines. So it might be art and science, it might be art and heritage, it might be science and heritage. So the value of investing in the arts is in how that investment enables creativity, which is universal. And so in that respect, investment into the arts at a city level enables creativity to be amplified through any discipline, really.
Thank you.
And so we would support continued funding for the arts because we see that it realises benefits for creativity across a number of areas.
Thank you, that's great. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. It appears that we have reached the end of questions. I'll just check. Yes? Yeah, so those are all the questions for today. Thank you very much for coming in and submitting today, and we will consider your submission along with the others.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have a submission from Walter Davis. That is submission number 569.
Press where it says push and the green light should come on.
Walter, so we do have a traffic light system there. Green, it'll be green for about 7 minutes, orange for 2 and red for 1, and it's good if you leave some time for questions as well. But we're ready whenever you are.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. I'll try and do that. Good evening, Chair, Councillor Dingwall, and good evening to all the councillors. I thought I'd just start by congratulating Councillor Orphy on the recent victory in the by-election. I don't think Orphy knows this, but his sister actually works for us in our family business. And she told me last week, she said that Orphy he's living the dream life. Yeah, so I was thinking maybe I should be running for council at some stage as well. Anyway, the 10-year plan is a beautiful vision, and I want to acknowledge the many hours that have gone to setting out all the great initiatives in this plan that will provide for the city and develop our communities. But as beautiful as the plan is, there's an elephant in the room. And the elephant I'm talking about is our debt. Tonight, I'm submitting a proposal that will not only help begin tackling this issue, but at the same time also enables further growth of our city. I've read the financial reports that are part of the current plan, and I acknowledge that a 10-year revised plan will be put out once there's more certainty around the cost of the Nature Cools wastewater project. The dilemma, though, is that we anticipated this project would be 128 million in previous years, but this project will more likely be between 280 to 380 million, taking our debt to a level well beyond the policy limits of 200% of our revenue. My concern is that once costs are finally confirmed, the council will then have to review the plan we're discussing tonight and be forced to cut out many or almost all of the great new initiatives that are being put forward. My proposal tonight provides an alternative way to begin raising capital, but at the same time still enabling our city to move forward. The suggestion I submit is managing this challenge is to review all the council-owned parks and reserves, perform a cost-benefit study of all these assets, comparing the contribution these parks are providing compared to the cost, including the opportunity cost of having more residential land or commercial property in the city. Then to sell down 20 to 30% of land that's giving the lowest return in relation to cost. Doing this would create opportunity for more residential housing or new commercial hubs. It would reduce the cost of park ground maintenance, and the income generated from selling down this land could then be used to manage debt levels and reinvest in other important initiatives that would otherwise need to be cut. In this city, there are many extraordinarily large parks, and in some cases very near other parks. For example, we have the beautiful big 11.5 Colquhoun Park out in Milson, and then only 1,000 metres away we have Coronation Park, another 8 hectares of what could be prime commercial real estate. Salino Park at 6.5 hectares I think is also much larger than necessary. A large portion of this land could also be sold off, leaving still enough land for dog walkers and sports to happen. The old railway land that's still grass is also infrequently used and could easily be converted into more commercial land or land for hospitality businesses. If the council believes we do need to keep the current amount of parkland, then I would propose instead to consider a parkland replacement program. Instead of reducing the amount of parkland we have, look at what parkland we have that has a high commercial or residential value, and look at opportunities to replace these parks with parks on land that can't be used for residential or commercial growth. Possible places where replacement parks could be created is on the land that can't be built on, such as the Flyges Line flood area, or that has flood risk, or up the top of Kelvin Grove Road on the airport approach, the runway approach land. I couldn't say how much cash this initiative may free up, as I'm not privy to that detail of asset breakdown in the council's reports, but it would be significant. According to the 2019 annual report, The council has $132 million of council operational land. I don't know what amount of this land is parks and reserves, but I suspect it would be the majority. I would also expect the current market value of land to be significantly higher than values used in this report. The council is currently running what appears to be a fairly successful land development project off James Line. Maybe it could put these newfound capabilities to use and develop some redundant parks into desirable residential properties or vibrant commercial hubs. This would give the council the opportunity to not only add substantial extra value to the assets, but also to develop a small section of Palmerston the way you want Palmy to be, rather than leaving it to developers to choose the design of our suburbs. Beginning now with a cost-benefit review, then over the coming 5 to 10 years, developing or selling land at a controlled rate would be much better politically than to get into a situation like the Auckland City Council. They've run debt levels almost out to limits with little safety buffer. Now their Finance and Performance Committee is forcing a sell down of some parkland and what the media are describing as a fire sale to meet debt obligations. I acknowledge that my submission of a cost-benefit review of parkland may be somewhat unpalatable from a political standpoint, but I would ask you to consider the alternatives. Due to the huge financial burden our city is facing in the coming Nature Calls project, the Palmerston North Council is at a watershed moment financially. What investment is the council going to cut that doesn't stop us moving forward as a city? Do you want to get ahead of the problem now by reviewing our investment in parkland, or do you want to be forced to cut many of the other excellent initiatives in this plan? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Walter. We've got Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Walter, for quite a bold submission. I've got two questions for you. The first is your comment in your written submission is around assessing, which you just touched on, assessing the parks and reserves around what would not create a detrimental effect to the community and sell those ones. I'm just wondering where you take into account the reputational damage, especially if we consider the proposal that was, I think, about 8 years ago now, to sell a handful of pieces of land, including a couple of reserves. And, I mean, that still is raised often today in reference and submissions. So how would you weigh up the reputational damage that would come with having that as a consideration?
Yeah, well, thank you for acknowledging it's a bold submission. It's certainly not being made with any self-interest, because I've got a young family myself that'll, I don't want to miss out on parks, but be that as it may. The difficulty the council would have in taking on my submission would obviously be figuring out how to put a monetary value on the benefit that those parks give to our city, especially from a brand perspective, obviously, and I acknowledge the difficulty that would be. I haven't got the answer to that. I can't tell you how to do it, but it would obviously need to be a major consideration in taking this on. I don't have the answer, is the short answer, and I acknowledge the challenge in that, but at the same time, it's just got to be weighed up with the reputational damage of having to pull back what we've put out now as a very attractive 10-year plan.
Okay, thank you. And then just my next question was, you had a reference to the stats on occupancy or usage of parks and reserve being only not used 95% of the time, but I couldn't see a reference. Where did that statistic come from? Yeah, sorry, so I didn't cover that in my submission just now. I was thinking of a lot of parkland. So I haven't gone out there and sat beside parks with a stopwatch, I'll acknowledge that. But a lot of land, what I did acknowledge in my written submission is really only parks are used to capacity on Saturday mornings for sport. And what I would suggest as an alternative to the council to manage that peak demand is to collaborate with schools to see if schools can free up their school fields to be used for Saturday morning sport, so that all that activity that's absolutely awesome for our city can still continue. Okay, but that's just your assumption of usage.
That's right. It was, yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Walter, for your submission. So you've identified the issue that we have with our debt being outside of the policy limits, and you've come up with one option, obviously, to help solve that issue. You've acknowledged that perhaps it might not be the most popular thing to tackle. Do you have any other suggestions of other ideas that would also help solve that issue of our debt and our financial, going over our financial limits?
Yeah, I do, but it's also unpopular. I noticed there was 60-something million tagged to the library earthquake building strengthening. If I owned the library, I would have thought the library as space would hardly justify that cost. So I would like the council to review that in line with debt considerations, and whether there's a way. I mean, libraries are very different now to what they were 40 years ago. I would like the council, if possible, to review that 60 million and consider creating more modern learning spaces and research spaces around the city for the communities. That would mean we could avoid that burden of putting $60 million into a very old, not modern designed building. But with that, obviously, there's also that heritage damage, potentially, that would have to be considered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Walter. And we have now reached the end of the time for your submissions. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us today, and we will consider this with all the other submissions.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have now reached the end of our submissions for today. So we will be adjourning until Thursday, Committee of Council on Thursday, the 27th of May at 9 a.m. Sorry, I've just quickly lost my notes. So, nō reira, ngā mihi nui ki... sorry. Nō reira, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou, e nā mana, e nā reo, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.